What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Real Talk number 14. Today, I'd like to talk about two huge indie novel fallacies that have been being spread around again on Twitter as of late. First one, and it's a doozy, has to do with cover art. Now, I've done a couple videos, as have many other people, in regards to AI cover art. And there was this kind of battle on Twitter between a really big author and some indie authors in regards to the moral, let's say, quandaries around AI art as well as costs around real art. And some of the people that responded to the anti-AI art individual were really hyperbolic. They really made it seem like the guy was attacking others and being aggressive, but really he was just kind of explaining similar thoughts as I've had in regards to the potential legal issues, the risks of your image, of losing sales if you use AI cover art. Now, amongst all this back and forth, the biggest fallacy popped up, which is that any good cover art has to cost at least $1,000. Now, I don't know where that number came from. I'm assuming that the folks that were pushing that notion spent at least $1,000 on their cover art. And ironically, one of the individuals has a publisher who pays for his cover art, so the cost isn't even a factor for them in reality. Now, I think many know, but not enough, that you can get fantastic cover art for well under $1,000. Even for a third of that, half of that, even wraparound covers for half that cost. But they're pushing this notion it has to be at least $1,000. And some individuals even said, yeah, let me see your cover art that costs less than $1,000, and I'll make sure to point out how it's not actually good. But when you show them, well, in my case, I showed them my 4 covers that were affordable and good, better than good in my opinion. And they didn't have any response, of course, but others, they put them on blast if they thought that the cover art was not up to snuff. Now, what's ironic about it is the folks that are saying, oh, it's at least $1,000, they're very pro AI art. So they're almost trying to convince folks, like, hey, you should use AI, or hey, you shouldn't have an issue with AI art because I use it, or not me personally, but others use it. And it's like they're almost trying to, convince folks that there's no issue with folks using AI cover art. And some of them, ironically, also provide graphic design services for around $300, where there isn't real art. There's potentially a stock image and some fancy kind of lettering for the cover, when you could get real cover art, fantastic cover art, for $300 if you look in the right places. So it's very ironic, right? It's like they're potentially trying to shit on cover artists in order to make money themselves on their graphic designs. And some people also went into the direction, which I've seen this a couple times over the last few years, and it's annoying as hell, is, oh, artists are whiny and artists are like fortunate because they get paid right away. And it's like, what is that shit? Like, in most jobs or services, you do get paid for your services, right? Either in advance or, after the work is complete. Now, this is where I see a lot of resentment in parts of the community because, let's be honest, artists, and when I say artists, I'm saying folks that are doing drawing, right, for cover art, and potentially coloring, inking, those types of things. Some make really good money. Some of them do comic books and make really good money. And let's be honest, it's a struggle in the indie novel community because you put in thousands of hours of work into a book, and because of traditional publishing and the way that that's panned out, you don't get paid for it up front, right? You have to invest thousands of dollars potentially, right, in editing and cover art to just sit and wait to hopefully get small chunks of, royalties or whatnot through Amazon and eventually hopefully make your money back. Now, people shouldn't be taking their anger out at artists. I mean, let's be frank. It's those artists that provide us marketing material. It's what provides us an avenue to get folks to open our books, to even read our pitch, right? It's that cover art that pulls the reader in, especially in a bookstore and especially on a crowdfunder or Amazon. It's that cover art. So we should be thankful that they exist. Unfortunately, some folks are now saying we should be thankful for AI. Well, I have other videos on that. But people should be taking their aggression out at traditional publishing, right? It's because of the route that they've taken and their lack of inclusion, ironically, and just poor taste, that folks can't get cut a check for $5,000-$10,000 for their book and then get royalties and then use that money right to just make more novels and rinse and repeat. The barrier of entry into traditional publishing is insane. Anyone that's looked at wish lists from literary agents or submitted to literary agents knows this. So if you want to be mad that you can't get paid upon the completion of your book, that's because of how shitty traditional publishing has become. It's that simple. It's not the artist's fault. And yes, there are some artists out there that take advantage of people that, may provide a bad experience, but that's life. You go to a mechanic, you go to a grocery store, any service provider, there's always going to be a few that give you a bad experience. It doesn't mean you stop going to the grocery store or you stop going to the mechanic. That's nonsense. So I really think that resentment, that needs to stop. People need to be connecting with more artists. We need to be collaborating with more artists online so that you can get access to the right fit for you, so that you can also share those artists with other people so that they don't have the same struggles and so that they're not forced to use AI art. Now, the biggest argument for AI art is the lack of funds for people. Now, I am sympathetic, of course, towards folks that are struggling financially. I've been in that position. Many others have. Now, of course, there's extenuating circumstances where folks literally can't save up any money and, are in a situation where they literally cannot afford any cover art. I am sympathetic to those cases, and I can understand why they would want to go the route of stock art or AI art. But I think in many cases, it is possible for folks to save up for cover art. Just like you save up for anything that you would like to buy that isn't an absolute necessity, in a sense. It takes you a year, if not many years, for some of us to write a novel. That gives you a long period of time to not only look for artists, but also save up, right? Even if that's $10 a month, $20 a month, you can get to $300, $500, or even $1,000 if you really want to spend $1,000. It's possible. It could mean working a couple overtime shifts. It could mean a second job for a week or two. But if you really, really want it, fortunately in America, it's typically possible to come up with a couple $100. It really is. But you also have to consider there are artists in lower cost countries, right? Whether that's the Philippines, Vietnam, you name it, Russia. There's tons of artists all over the world where there are, extremely capable and high quality artists that you can pay 200, $300 or less for great art. But this will tie into the second, kind of part of this fallacy. And that is the lack of patience. That is why this is such an issue, in my opinion. I think many of us, including myself initially, you're so focused on writing your novel that you're not even thinking about the cover art until you get done, and then, man, you can't wait to get your book out there. natural, right? I was the same way. And so you're in a hurry. I need to have an editor run through this. I need to find cover art. And so unfortunately, many novelists just go to kind of an echo chamber of resources, per se, and that's like Fiverr, right? Places where there are artists that do cover art. The problem is folks are only looking at novel cover art. They're only looking at, oh, well, this novelist used this artist, so I'm going to use them. And oh, well, here's all the choices. That's all there is. It's Fiverr. This is all I could find on Google. And they kind of pigeonhole themselves into either overpaying for art or settling, unfortunately. And I didn't have the right fit for my initial cover art years ago, because I was impatient. It was a great piece of cover art, but it just, after a year or two, I was just like, man, that's just it. I'm not feeling it, when it comes to my story. And so that lack of patience is why some people end up being dissatisfied with their cover art or dissatisfied with the price that they paid. And then down the road, they're like, well, screw it, I'll just use AI because look at what AI is pumping out. But again, there's risk to using AI because there's a chunk of the audience that will refuse to buy AI, related books. You have that quandary of, do I be honest and upfront and tell folks that it's AI art with the risk of losing customers? And there's a risk of, I mean, who knows if there's legislation one day and Amazon's like, sorry, we won't host anything that has AI art, and they start running it through a filter or something, then you got to start over for a cover art. Not saying that's going to happen, but it's a risk. You don't have to worry about that when you own the art or the rights to your own art. So what I believe, novelists need to do is they need to look and think outside the box, meaning look outside of those websites and resources that all novelists tend to go to. And I think the best resource out there, from my personal experience and from many others, is places like Twitter, Instagram. Biggest part of it is, again, look outside of folks that do novel cover art. There are painters and comic book artists all over the world that can do phenomenal cover art. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, but I don't want my cover art to look like a comic, so I can't use a comic book artist. Well, most, if not many, comic book artists can draw in several styles, right? They could provide you what you're looking for. If you give them reference material and say, hey, do you have an example of something that could look like this style? If you're patient and you, again, instead of waiting until the very end of when your novel is done, if you start looking throughout the course of when you're writing it, you can find artists all over Twitter and just look at the work they've done, and something might just speak to you. And that's what happened to me. That's how I came across my initial artist, Corey Barton. I saw him and his brother's comic book, and the art just spoke to me. I'm like, man, that's the style of line art I would like, this type of coloring. Just the characters were just had that grittiness to them that I'm like, man, that's how I envision my characters. I just had a really good feeling that, one of them could capture my characters correctly. And I mean, it took me like 4 or 5 months to find him. I looked at plenty of other people, but again, it was a matter of being patient. And I learned that patience from being impatient the first time around. So it was a learning experience. And then I came across another cover artist and another that I worked with. And I got referrals from people, and there were other artists that I considered that I would still consider in the future. Point is, there are so many folks out there that could do novel cover art that aren't, known as novel cover artists. And they're very affordable. And they're all over the world. And they love to do cover art commissions on the side of like their normal comic book work because it's something new, it's something fresh. And so it's enjoyable for most of them, and it's a great way for them to make some extra money. The other thing is, well, I guess before I jump, I'll give you some examples, right? So I worked with a total of 3 cover artists. I also had another artist do some interior work, but here's of Blood and Stone. So Vigilantes Creed Book 1, available on Indiegogo. But as you can tell, it's a little bit more comic book art style. But since comic books were a big inspiration for me and influenced the story in comic book movies as well, that's why I wanted to go with that style. Also, it was a good fit for like this Lovecraftian style character Incubus here. So that's one style. Was very affordable. Now here's a second style. This guy is a painter. His name's Skunk Artworks. Definitely give him a follow and check out his work. I highly recommend him, as well as Corey Barton, who did the first piece there. But he does hand paintings of different styles. Now, he initially just did paintings. Now he's starting to work on comic books. But look, again, you can find, people like him, Dan Lawless. There's others that can do like Frazetta style art, that's painted or has that painted look. That would be great for like, Conan, stories like that. And I wanted something that had an Alex Ross feel, who also did comics. But again, it's a much different look and style. Again, very affordable. And then here's another gentleman, Joe Ball, who did the duology cover and the black and white art book cover, who had just this crazy mixture of like comic book style art, but just insanely detailed black and white art. So it has just I- it's so detailed. Like I can't even like explain. Like it almost has like a noir feeling, and but the black and white, it gives a different type of representation. But he did a cover that works in both directions, right? Introduces all the characters. Just absolutely awesome. Guys should definitely follow him. Again, very affordable as well. So that's 3 different art styles that I was able to find all on Twitter. All of them work on comics, but they also do cover art for novels, and they do, like Skunk, he does paintings. So again, thinking outside the box. You can find great artists that are affordable, that will give you a great experience, but you also have to put effort into it. Don't just pick, oh, I want it to kind of look like this, with an example of another novel. Take some time. If you can't draw, that's fine. Put together a collage of images and lengthy descriptions to be like, hey, this is how I envisioned the face to look, and then give an example. Like, I want it to kind of look like this. The hair. I mean, every aspect you can give them reference material, so it's much easier for them. And then they can give you sample layouts, and you can choose, like, oh, this is what I'm thinking. But they have so much experience with all these different covers and pieces of art they've done that they can really work with you to find the best fit for you and even help you come up with something that you may not have even thought of. Again, like this cover, I just I saw the guy's work, Joe's work. I was like, dude, just do whatever you think is the best fit. Never thought I'd have something this crazy detailed and with being able to put all the major characters on the cover. So you can be very happily surprised by some of the artists out there. So that's the biggest, or that's the again, you need to be patient. There is affordable cover art out there, extremely affordable cover art out there. You just need to think and look outside the box, and you can find affordable cover art. You do not have to use AI. You do not have to use stock images. You do not have to spend $1,000. You don't even need to come close to spending $1,000. You could get several pieces of cover art for $1,000, even wraparounds, like I've just showed you. It's possible. So the second big fallacy I wanted to cover is there was this notion, and I've seen this throughout the last couple of years, but a an individual that was also in that cover art debate, I guess, was also pushing the notion that everyone's first novel is going to suck and that you'll need to throw it away. So I really hate generalizations that just paint a broad brush across all novelists. It would be okay to say, like, hey, there's a good chance that your first novel may not be up to snuff or your first story idea. That would be fair. It would be fair to say that it may require a lot of editing, potential rewrites. That's very fair. But to say, as if it's a fact, like your first book is going to suck and you'll need to throw it away, it's absolute nonsense. Maybe that was the case for that person, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the case for everybody. Everybody has different experiences at different levels, just like with cover art. And this also ended up with that individual telling me that my novels suck because I spent 5 years writing them, even though they've never read any of it. That generalization is such bullshit. Everybody works at their own pace, and no one should be pressured into writing books in a short amount of time. And in fact, I think there are books out there that are of lower quality than they could have been because they have this sense that like I've got to put out a book a year, I got to put out several books instead of being like, hey, I'm so passionate about this one story idea, I'm going to spend years doing research to make it the best book possible. And that's the route I took. Um, but yeah, not everyone's first novel sucks. There are plenty of famous writers that their first novel, their first story, ended up being amazing and making them extremely famous. So can you imagine if, and I've heard like J.K. Rowling, Tolkien, others, right? Their first novel, first story idea ended up obviously being something huge. Imagine if they would have listened to that notion back in the day and thrown that story idea out just to start another story because that's what they were told to do. What a shame. I mean, think of all the phenomenal movies out there from folks like Christopher Nolan that they spend years on a script versus just taking a job and just pumping out a script so they can do like a movie a year. So they do like a movie every 3 or 4 years. But those movies end up being so epic and phenomenal because they put all of their effort into that one story. So, and that's the other thing too is like, okay, a first time novelist, yes, you may have grammar issues, you may have punctuation issues, sentence structure, story structure, all those things may be an issue, but those things can improve in time. And yes, practice does make you less imperfect. Doesn't mean you have to write different stories to get that practice. You could practice on that same story. And it's not just about practicing your writing, it's about reading several books from different mediums as well, watching things from different mediums, learning from novels, from comics, from films, all of that. It's just not as simple as just, write 100,000 words or a million words or any of that. Everybody is different. Everyone starts out with a different skill set and level of ability. And everyone has different stories. Even if the mechanics, you know, of the story and whatnot are very rough, someone could have a phenomenal story behind it. And it's just a matter of fine tuning it. You would never want to toss that story out just because people told you, oh, your first novel's never going to be good. That would be an extreme shame if folks just threw out their initial story. Now, if that first story isn't really hitting with you, if you're just not feeling real passionate about it, it's not really clicking, then yeah, maybe that's a sign to move on to something different. But if you really feel passionate about it, that story means something to you, and you believe it could really hit the ground running in the market, don't give up on it just because other people say, oh, it might suck or this, that, and the other. No. And don't think you have to do it in a certain amount of time. You have all the time in the world. Do it at your own pace. Make it the best it can be. Same goes for cover art. Take your time, put effort and resources into it, make it the best it can be. And ideally something that is risk-free and there are no potential worries ethically or morally. So yeah, I mean those are just those two kind of topics were just beaten to a pulp, whether it was through Twitter, YouTube, whatnot. But you had folks on both sides kind of going to extremes, but really the pro AI folks, like it's like they took offense to you know, when others were like, there are moral issues, there are commercial issues, there's potential legal issues, and then, there some were taking shots at artists, and it's like you get this sense that folks just are having issues with humans. like like you're promoting, machines that, in my opinion, and many others, are stealing the art of others, not compensating them, and then you're almost some, again, not going to do generalizations, but some are trying to push folks away from supporting other artists. It's like, no, everyone should be trying to collaborate, promote one another. And that's the other thing I forgot to mention when it comes to the cover art. It's your marketing tool. You're not just buying what's going to go on your cover. It's much more than that. You're potentially buying the art for a banner, for book conventions, comic book conventions, farmers markets. You're also buying potential art for bookmarks, prints, things that you could sell to make your product or book more marketable. It can be repurposed for several different things, but it is your online marketing tool. And I think one of the other issues, which is just well known, is just folks that publish the book and they just sit back and expect it to make money on its own, especially on Amazon. Oh, there's millions of people looking for books. Yeah, but if you're not a top seller and you're not paying for ads, it's getting buried. It may not even show up in the search results in the first page or two. So you have to market yourself, sadly, right? Because again, you don't have trad publishing to market for you. This is why, again, you should be angry at how the mainstream has pushed things right to this point. You're the only one that can get out there, use your art, use your writing ability to market yourself on Twitter, in person, all over the place, YouTube, just like I am here. You have to put yourself out there. You have to put a maximum amount of effort. And so you need that art and you need high quality art. The other thing is your artist can be a great marketing tool in a sense. One thing that's unfortunate in the novel space is people don't really know the names of novel cover artists. It's not something like in the comic book world where it's like if you hire a specific artist, people will literally buy your comic book just for that art or that cover. It's awesome. Or that, just for that name. But the nice thing is there are comic book readers that read novels. There are novel readers that follow comic book artists online. So from my own personal experience, and this is why I recommend comic book artists, is that their name and their recognition can get you sales. And most times they'll also promote you because they want to promote their own work, right? They want to show people what they've done. So if they have thousands of followers and they are retweeting your tweets or your videos, or they're making their own posts like, hey, everybody, look at this cover art I did for X. It can help your following grow. It can help you get sales. It's a great marketing tool if you work with known artists or artists that, again, their art is so phenomenal that that art can speak for itself. I mean, think about it. You use AI cover art and someone's like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. Who did it? And you're like, oh, it was AI. I mean, that person might think, oh, that's a bummer. A machine made it and it was free. And then I would have to pay for that book. I mean, I know, obviously you're paying for the guts of the book too, but it kind of, it takes away from the beauty of the art and just that excitement for the fact that, someone you would think did it by hand and that you could just be so impressed by that. And that adds to their impression of your book. And, what's nice is if you have a real cover artist, you can be like, hey, this person did it. You can tag them, you can help them out even more. And then they might be even more motivated to help you as well. So there's you can have a great symbiotic relationship with cover artists. It doesn't just have to be like, oh, I commission them for a piece of art and then that's it. It doesn't have to be that way. And again, you can use that art for so much to drive sales. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those two items. Um, I really try to have kind of a level-headed approach. I'll be honest, some of those tweets online, some were even directed at me. They're quite frustrating. And some folks might not like my stance on AI, but again, I understand why folks do go that route, but I think a big part of it is either a lack of patience, but sometimes it's just a lack of information. Folks aren't aware of all these artists that are out there, all these resources, and the actual cost for great art. This is why you need to share your artists with others. You need to promote artists, give people recommendations. If you're online and you see somebody that had great cover art, feel free to reach out to them. I mean, honestly, anybody. If you like the art I have, just message me. I'll send you their tag. I'll get you in contact with them because I want my artist, to be able to work more. And I want to help other novel artists not struggle and not be forced to go the AI route. So if I can help them, that's awesome. We need more people doing videos, just sharing their experiences, their lessons learned, sharing their resources in terms of people they know so that again it's easier for other people and they don't feel so lost and so rushed and they don't end up going a route that might not be the best for them in the end. So yeah, that's my take on all of it. I appreciate everybody listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Of course, I got to promote myself. uh, Vigilantes Creed, two novels and a mini comic about about a gargoyle and a team of vigilantes fighting terror in Detroit. It is a Lovecraftian style story. Anyone that's a fan of Alan Moore, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, would absolutely love the story. It's gritty, but it's filled with emotion. It's got a layered narrative. I highly recommend it to folks. Of course, any order will be shipped out within 2 days from Indiegogo. And what's unique is this mini comic introduces all of the major and supporting characters so that you know exactly what they look like, so that you can play it out like a movie in your mind as you're reading. You're not trying to, remember what they look like or put the pieces of the puzzle together per se. And yeah, makes it a more immersive reading experience. So please, everybody go to Indiegogo.com, Vigilantes Creed. There is a link in the description below, so please check it out. And thank you guys. God bless.